This is a guy that on paper I'm very much against. That won my trust that the whole conversation was happening in good faith.
If you don't have that perspective, if you're not respectful of this, there is no way you're going to kind of move things in a positive direction.
Hey there, it's Julie. Welcome to Uncomfy. You know, a lot of us are struggling right now with how to stay open to other people when we seem to be living in different realities. I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells, but I also don't want to give up on connection with others. This is a podcast about staying with the moments we usually want to escape, the awkward ones, the tense ones, the ones that honestly can actually teach us something. So let's get uncomfy. Imagine a group of 23 people with very strong opposing views on one of the most difficult topics in American society, guns. You've got people in this group who have spent their careers pushing for restrictions on who can own guns and what types should even be legal. And at the same table, you have gun owners who've built their own careers defending the right to bear arms. And this group meets together every month for a whole year trying to come up with a package of gun laws they can all agree on. These meetings last for hours, sometimes in person, sometimes online. But what can they possibly agree on? Well, they've now released their results, and I am so excited to be speaking with two people who were part of that group from different perspectives. Campbell is with me. He's a gun owner and a well-known voice in the Second Amendment space. He writes for Recoil Magazine and Open Source Defense. welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Julie.
And we have Dr. Eric Fleegler. He's a pediatric emergency physician at Massachusetts General Hospital. He researches the effects of gun violence and how to prevent it. Dr. Fleegler, hi. Welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the two of you didn't know each other before this. Maybe you knew of each other, right? But you were not previously acquainted before this endeavor?
That's correct.
I don't know about Eric. I had no idea who he was, so.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Well, going into this project then, and I guess I really want you to be honest here. What did you think the odds were that it would actually succeed, that you could actually find any consensus around firearm laws? BJ?
I think I said to the group the first day in Denver, inside the first maybe hour of that meeting, that I was just here to watch it fail. that was why I joined. I wanted to see the look on Mike's face when his project messed up. But I was pleasantly surprised. Mike Siegel, the guy who ran the project overall.
Right. So he's a nationally known researcher who at Tufts University who thought maybe we could pull something off here. So you wanted to see it fail.
I did. I'd known Mike for a long time, and I wanted to watch his feet get wet with how dirty the gun discussion could get. And in the end, I was pleasantly surprised at how well it turned out. So I felt my role was not to compromise. My role was to provide the gun violence prevention folks the perspective of the person that they were impacting and what they would or wouldn't agree with. And then that was it. You know, it's like, well, I can't agree with that. So then I felt like I had the ability to walk away from any of the proposals at any time. And that ability to walk away also meant that they had to listen. Right. And so that's kind of the perspective that I walked into it with anyway.
Which, you know, I don't know, Dr. Fleegler, I imagine he wasn't the only one kind of on the other side of the table that was like, look, we're not here to compromise. If you want to get something passed, you're going to have to figure out how to get it past us. So what was your take on that and sort of what kept you at the table?
I was optimistic, not unrealistic, but everybody who joined this group knew this was going to be challenging. Like that was the purpose of this group, was to have that challenge and see how we could approach it. You know, this notion that a compromise is the end stage, that nobody is happy is a good compromise. I'm kind of on BJ's side in terms of like, that wasn't my perspective. There is no question I compromised in our discussions the things that I would, you know, if I wanted to get this far and they only wanted to go this far as a group, I did have to change that. And would I have loved to have gone further in some of these areas? 100%. At the end, however, the product I think that we put together and the way that this happened, I don't feel is compromised. I actually feel I love it. Would I like to make something stronger? Absolutely. Do I understand why we got where we got to? Absolutely.
Well, tell me about a moment maybe in this year-long process that was challenging for you, where you either made some sort of uncomfortable realization or, you know, you felt like you were being asked to kind of come to the table in a way that was, you know, that was necessary, but also you're like, I really don't want to swallow this. Was there a moment like that for you?
Sure. There were, as I'm sure your audience is probably aware, there are many, many ways to not have background checks when purchasing guns. And one of them, interestingly, is groups of people who are excluded from needing to go through them. And one of the things that came forward was like people who are in the law enforcement could have an automatic pass, among others. And I was struggling with this because while I understand those individuals own firearms, that they've been trusted in the public with that, the notion that they could not have things, and the major thing I was thinking at the time was around domestic violence, that they wouldn't have these, flags in their background, it's just not an accurate thing. Of course, there are going to be individuals that have flags, and there's data to suggest these may be even higher risk individuals for those flags. But the nature of the way the conversation went was like, listen, if you're going to try to expand background checks at all through this legislation that we're proposing, we're going to have to give some certain members that pass to get it to move forward. And that was a tough nut for me initially. It really kind of
What convinced you
stuck in me.
that, because you were like, no, I don't want to just exempt all police officers from the background checks because of the risk that they might actually use the gun for harm, especially maybe in a domestic violence or a suicide situation.
Yeah, this was one of those situations when we were in Denver where we actually had to table the conversation. We usually tried to start with one and finish it up before moving to the next one. And we tabled this one. And honestly, I had to mull it over overnight and just say, listen, for me, it will ultimately be better to be more expansive in how we do background checks, even though I don't really believe people should be exempted from this, to get it to move forward.
Okay. And ultimately, the policy that the group was able to agree on was that exemption did stay in the recommendations, that if you're active duty military or a law enforcement officer, that you'd be exempt from those background checks, among other things. Correct. So BJ, when was the moment, can you recall, when you realized that you were not going to be able to sit here and watch this fail, that in fact, it was going to succeed despite your expectations? Was there a moment where that turned around for you?
I think the most profound moment for me was when there was a guy who was sitting pretty near me that I am, generally speaking, very ideologically opposed to on paper. And we were talking about red flag laws and the ERPOs and extreme risk protection orders, which is, when somebody comes to take your guns away because they're afraid you might do something in advance, that kind of thing. And these are very contentious laws. The gun community really feels like they can be abused. And there was a discussion about, well, the problem with having this be civil law instead of criminal law is the defendant's not guaranteed an attorney. And that's a problem with a lot of existing red flag laws, I'm led to believe. And this other guy who's next to me, he approached me and he said, BJ, look, I'm an attorney and this guy's a known notable attorney in the gun control space. He says, all attorneys have to do a certain amount of pro bono work. There are Second Amendment attorneys in every state. They've got to do the pro bono work. And I know them, I've got a list of them. All we got to do is just pass that list around to everybody who gets a red flag to say, hey, look, these are the people you can call pro bono. And you can put it into the law that says that when a red flag is served, the police also say, and also, by the way, here's a list of lawyers who can help you look after your best interests for free. And I was like, the fact that it was a gun control lawyer who brought that idea to me, and it was something I'd never even thought about before, that was kind of the moment when I started to think, well, if they're that vested, he's not trying to win. He's trying to come up with cool ideas. And this is a guy that, like I say, on paper, I'm very much against. That won my trust in that moment that this thing could go forward, that the whole conversation was happening in good faith.
Trust, good faith. Those seem like two really key components here. But I imagine it took quite a bit of time, obviously, interactions, face-to-face, to really build that. What else was required, do you think, Dr. Fleegler, to pull this off successfully?
So, a couple of things. I think one of the things we had to all realize about each other is that in the end, I think the majority of us would say that, we don't want people to be harmed, and certainly not harmed by guns. So if we have that framework, that's an important thing. We also, the majority of us, I think, would say we understand and respect the right to gun ownership. And so this is not about trying to come up with how do we get guns, out of this country. That wasn't the perspective at all. It was more of in this recognition. So as we move this conversation forward about how to prevent people from being hurt or dying by guns, you must keep the individuals who are many of these gun owners in mind, because if you don't have that perspective, if you're not respectful of this, there is no way you're going to kind of move things in a positive direction. And that really came out of spending time with BJ and other people who are part of our groups. Kind of, and although I grew up in a gun owning family, but it really helped me kind of move myself forward in that thinking process.
One of the things that Essential Partners did early on was they spent what I considered at the time to be too much time, in retrospect, probably not, on humanizing the people in the group, right? We would spend time telling about our weekend and talking about this and talking about that. And they carved off time to do these sorts of things that I did not feel at the time was valuable, but in retrospect, it was absolutely valuable, because what it did was it established everyone in the procedure as a real person and not just, an opposing headshot on a glowing screen. Like an example, Eric might remember this. I believe the first thing that we did in Denver on Sunday morning was we talked about what song we'd played the most in our cars over the past week, which, I didn't fly to Denver to talk about that, but they did that on purpose because that creates connections with people that you wouldn't even know, existed until after the discussion, right?
And very quickly, so these icebreakers, if you will, for one, they were really good. People really engage with them. They very quickly moved from a model where they were kind of like leading the ice breaking to very quickly just breaking us into small groups right from the beginning, saying, here's what you're tasked with. Everybody gets 60 seconds talking about X. And we did it amongst ourselves. And it really developed these bonds in a deep way that having 20 people on the screen at one time or 30 people was never going to do. And it made a difference. They were amazing.
Do you feel more hopeful about the possibility of reducing the number of deaths that are attributed to firearms in America now as opposed to before you engaged in this project?
Yes. I mean, there's no way you can do the work that we do if you don't believe you can make a difference, period. And so I do believe that from my own research and research of other colleagues out there, that firearm legislation is a very important part of reducing gun violence in the United States and fatalities. And I think this legislation has a role in moving things forward, and I do believe in it.
BJ, what's different for you, either professionally or personally, having participated in this project?
What's different for me? Not much, I think it was kind of interesting seeing what we produced was effectively a year and a half effort in good faith. But it's not scalable unless you could have good faith at scale. And the reason why is this, if I bring this package to a gun owner, just a random gun owner in Georgia or somebody like that, they're going to look at it and say, this is an effort in bad faith. They're just trying to get what they can do now so they can do what they really want to do tomorrow, which is take my guns away. Right? That's going to be the perspective. And it's that they say it all the time. And there are reasons they say that.
I mean, do you feel like the effort was worth it? Like what?
Yes, absolutely. It was 100% worth it. And I need to make sure that Eric knows that too, because I know he feels very invested in it. It was worth it for many reasons. I mean, one of them is a proof of concept. It's like, look, there are a set of policies that you can get gunners to agree on. One. Two, it may be worth it in the long term in someplace like Virginia, because Virginia is very likely to flip back and forth blue, red. And if the blues throw 50 gun laws on the table and the reds take them all off and the blues throw the 50 ones back on, there might be at some point somebody in that hyperventilating oscillation of law that says, hey, look, is there any package somewhere we can just all agree on and be done with this mess? And they might turn around and see our thing, we could shake it in front of their faces, which would be good for both groups, the blues and the reds that are fighting over Virginia, as an example. There's a lot of different ways that this could be implemented or used in different ways, but the important thing was to get a good document on the table. And then now what happens with it, who knows, right? But it's good to see it out there so that then somebody can take it and use it some way.
And it's interesting. The actual rules and what we're recommending are important, but it's the process that is, just fundamentally a value which will give it a lot more legitimacy. Another wonderful thing about this group was just the opportunity to, I've got a relationship with BJ. We know who each other are. We know our perspectives on things. We have where we agree, where we disagree. That was an amazing thing to come out of this.
Eric Fleegler is a pediatric emergency physician at Massachusetts General Hospital. He researches the effects of gun violence and how to prevent it. Dr. Fleegler, it's really been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And BJ Campbell is a gun owner, a well-known voice in the Second Amendment movement. He is a writer for Recoil Magazine and Open Source Defense. Thanks again for joining us today, BJ.
Thank you.
To read the full report of this effort they were a part of, as well as the 8 policies that they agreed on and the full legislative package that they are making available to states, you can visit bridgethedividenow.org. We'll put a link to it in the show notes as well. And thank you for getting uncomfy with us today. Well, today's episode was a little bit different. We were really kind of getting into the guts of this experience that these two folks have had. And I guess I'm curious if you would ever sign up for something like that. And what do you think it would take for you to be able to, become friends with somebody who has diametrically opposed views on something that's really important to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email uncomfy@byu.edu or connect with us on social media to keep the conversation going. We are at uncomfy.podcast on Instagram. Uncomfy is a BYU radio podcast. Samuel Benson produces it, and the team includes Hyobin Kim and Abby Karras. Our theme music was composed by Kelsey Ney. I'm Julie Rose. I can't wait to get uncomfy with you again next week. Before I leave you, I want to recommend another show from the BYU Radio family of podcasts that I'm pretty sure you're going to love. It's called Constant Wonder, and it consistently, or should I say constantly, ranks near the top of Apple's nature podcasts in their rankings. But Constant Wonder is about more than just nature. It's about finding awe in everything around us, including our own backyards. So on the show, you'll hear guests share stories of spiritual encounters with nature, of real-life accounts of human kindness and bravery, like a doctor on a quest to bring care to the homeless. See the world with new eyes as host Marcus Smith invites us to find wonder in every corner of life. Listen to new episodes of Constant Wonder every Wednesday on the BYU Radio app or wherever you listen to podcasts.